Hello and welcome to America's Test Kitchen perfects the recipe for streamlining backups at near zero RTO with Rubrik. Just a few house cleaning items before we get started. When you join today's webinar, you selected to either join by phone or computer audio. If for any reason you're having trouble with your audio or you just want to change your selection, you can go ahead and do that through the access panel, through the control panel with the audio pane. Also from your control panel, you'll have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters. You could type your questions right in the question pane, and we'll collect all those questions and address them during the Q&A session, which will be at the end of today's webinar. If for whatever reason we're not able to get to your question, we plan on responding to each of you personally through email. The deck will also be made available through SlideShare, along with a recording of the webinar 2 to 3 days after the conclusion of the presentation. So please keep an eye out in your email for that. My name is Henry Axelrod, and I am a Partner Solution Architect at Amazon Web Services, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webinar. In addition to my introductory presentation on backup and restore on AWS, today we'll also be hearing from Michael Wilson, Technical Marketing Engineer at Rubrik, as well as Dustin Brandt, Director of IT at America's Test Kitchen. With that, let's go ahead and get started with the webinar. So as I mentioned, I'm going to start off with a quick introductory presentation on backup and restore on AWS. So with AWS, to give you some foundation, AWS has infrastructure around the globe. We have regions that we have where we cluster data centers, which we call availability zones, in a particular geographical location. Currently, we have 21 geographical regions around the world, and we have 66 availability zones within those regions. Our availability zones are at least one building or data center, and can sometimes be multiple buildings that are separated by a meaningful distance and fault isolated. We've also announced 12 additional availability zones that we'll be releasing across 4 different new regions. So what are some of the core components of storage solutions on AWS? So the first component is the AWS services. So when we're talking about AWS services, we're not only talking about storage services, but a wide variety of services that AWS offers. At present, AWS offers over 165 different services. And those services work together to provide customers with an agile, scalable, durable, and economic solution for running any of their cloud-based workloads. In addition to the services that AWS offers, AWS works with technology partners like Rubrik that you hear from today to both integrate their existing on-premises solutions as well as build new solutions on AWS that add additional advanced functionality on top of the AWS services. And the last piece to the puzzle of those core components are our consulting partners. And our consulting partners help customers with both AWS services as well as technology partner solutions to help customers deploy and manage end-to-end business solutions. So I mentioned that AWS has many different services, and specifically when it comes to storage services, AWS has a wide variety of storage services. This is not a comprehensive list of the storage services, but to give you an idea of what some of those key services are. So AWS offers services across file like Amazon EFS and FSX, both for Windows and Lustre. Block services like Amazon Elastic Block Store or Amazon EBS that provides block storage to Amazon Elastic Cloud Compute or Amazon EC2 instances, as well as object storage, which is commonly used with backup workloads with our Amazon Simple Storage service, Amazon S3, as well as Amazon S3 Glacier. In addition to the storage services, AWS offers many different data transfer services to our customers in order to enable them to get data to and from the platform with ease. So when it comes specifically to Amazon S3, just having the services is important, but also having the features that customers need is equally important. And Amazon S3 offers many different storage classes to help meet customers' needs depending on where that data is in their data lifecycle. And it starts with active data that customers can use either the Amazon S3 standard or standard intelligent tiering storage classes to meet their needs for active data. As that data starts becoming less frequently accessed, we offer two infrequently accessed tiers, our standard infrequently accessed and our one zone infrequently accessed tiers. And finally, as that data needs to be archived or stored for long-term retention, we offer our Amazon S3 Glacier and our newly released Amazon S3 Glacier Deep Archive storage class to provide compelling economics for long-term retention. With these different storage classes, I mentioned earlier about the AZs or availability zones that we offer. And with all the storage classes, with the exception of one zone, data is protected across 3 or more availability zones when you store it in Amazon S3 bucket. One zone is the only exception, in which case data is stored in only a single availability zone to help those customers who have secondary or easily recoverable data to store that at a more cost-effective profile. So what are some of the challenges that we see with customers that are having to manage on-premises backups? Well, one thing is that it's difficult to manage the on-premises hardware. Customers that need to be able to scale up things like storage, for example, having to manage disk or tapes or other parts of the infrastructure can be difficult at scale. Customers also see high cost having to build and maintain that on-premises storage infrastructure. And finally, an important point is that customers are faced with new and ever more complex compliance requirements, and being able to manage that in a on-premises traditional way becomes ever more difficult. So what are some of the benefits that customers see when using AWS for backup and restore? For one, it provides them with an integrated solution. As I mentioned, AWS offers many different services, and customers are able to utilize those services and to really meet their needs. AWS also provides a highly secure environment. We provide many services that offer encryption both for data at transit and data at rest. It's also very easy for customers to be able to not only deploy but also maintain their environment. There's no need to procure any hardware. Customers are able to simply go in the AWS console and spin up any resources that they might need. AWS also provides a highly scalable environment. Customers have elasticity, able to scale up or scale down, and AWS offers services like Amazon S3, which provide virtually unlimited capacity, so customers don't have to worry about running out of space. Finally, with AWS, customers only pay for the resources that they use, so there's no need to, purchase or pay for resources that aren't being utilized, allowing you to lower your cost. So, as I mentioned, with partners and AWS Storage Competency partners, there's a lot of benefits that those partners bring to the table. For one, partners help make deployments easier. They provide interfaces to make all your configurations easier. They also offer different advanced services like incremental backups and policy-based backups, and help you also not only be able to back up that data, but to be able to rapidly recover that data when needed. Ultimately, all these things together help provide a very cost-effective solution for customers. Finally, as I mentioned on the AWS platform, we help customers to be secure, but we also help customers to be compliant. AWS works with many different security and assurance programs, some of which are listed here. As you can see, just as an example, we work with things like ISO 2717 and 2718 for cloud privacy and cloud security, things like SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. Customers can also be HIPAA, PCI, and GDPR compliant on the AWS platform, including even government customers who could be ITAR and FedRAMP compliant on the platform. This is only a subset of the different compliances that AWS works with. At present, AWS works with over 200 different security and assurance programs. For more information on this, you can visit the AWS website. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who's going to take you a bit through the Rubrik solution.
Thank you. All right, so my name is Mike Wilson, and I've worn a number of different hats in IT. I've been a contractor, sysadmin, tech support for some large OEM companies, just to name a few. And while I've enjoyed most of that work, there we go. While I've enjoyed most of that work, backup was never one of those jobs that I fully enjoyed. It always consisted of complicated products that worked when they wanted to. Additional infrastructure that had to be added, and complicated jobs that gave you no indication if they were truly successful or not until you tried to go to restore them. It was enough to give anyone a lot of headaches. But your data does need to be protected. And so about 5 years ago, Rubrik asked, why can't that be made easier? So Rubrik took this typical infrastructure that you see on the slide here, and we try to combine all of those into a much simpler package. And that's what we did. So Rubrik software allows you to protect the data that's important to you and your company, and makes it so simple that you don't have to have classes in order to use it. So there's no learning of new infrastructure, no adding software pieces at weird times everywhere just to back up your data. Backups just work, protecting what's important to you in the background until you need to access it. So if using it is so simple, surely it has to be difficult to set up then. That's not actually true. So actually the Rubrik cluster can be set up in as little as 15 minutes. And once the initial software setup is done, then you can go, Rubrik goes ahead and auto discovers your environment for you as well. You can literally be protecting your workloads within the first hour. Rubrik is also agnostic, so we protect just about any type of workload. And once ingested to the Rubrik cluster, we have a number of different options available for you to recover your data. Whether it's instant recovery, live mount for creation of a secondary copy, or just pulling individual files, we want you to be able to do what you need to do in order to keep your business running. And of course, we care about security as well. So no matter if your data is being transferred or at rest on your cluster, your data is encrypted. We should make mention as well that besides being encrypted, that it's also immutable once it's on the Rubrik cluster. It's read-only and can't be modified any further. And this is a great feature when seeing headlines like we saw just today, for instance, in Florida, about them needing to pay out, I think it was over $600,000 for ransomware. But what about the cloud? Well, we share the same code base no matter where the Rubrik cluster is, whether it's on-prem or if it's in cloud. And since we built our CDM product for the cloud world, you'll find all of our features such as near instant search, file level recovery, and the rest work no matter if the backup is archived to the cloud or if it's local. So let's go ahead and dig into the cloud abilities that Rubrik offers a little more. So as shown on the slide, Rubrik has a number of different cloud offerings, allowing you to use the cloud as your business needs dictate. You don't have to use them all at once. You can kind of mix and match and kind of go on and add things later as need be. And starting with the next slide, we'll kind of go even a little deeper. So the first offering we'll go over is CloudOut. This is a great feature for customers wanting to move off of tape into a more secure and performance-oriented solution. Instead of being bogged down by having to manually grab tapes, send them off site every week, and then go ahead and request them back when you need that data, you can set up your SLA policy to automatically send your backups to Amazon's S3 or Glacier storage services. So just like storing backups on our physical cluster, Rubrik intelligently uses this data in the cloud. We dedupe and compress locally on our cluster before sending your archive to cloud storage to keep your bandwidth and your storage costs down. We index the data first and keep that local so we can keep track of the location of your data and enable things like instant search, whether it's archived out to the cloud or not. And since we also implement an incremental forever, we greatly reduce bandwidth and storage needs for that reason as well. So as mentioned before, Rubrik is flexible and we enable you to use the cloud how you need to. One of the ways that we can do this is the ability to do what we call NAS Direct Archive. As soon as the data is indexed on the cluster, Rubrik then goes ahead and streams that data to the final archival location and retains nothing but the metadata itself on the local cluster. And this allows you to save lots of space on your Rubrik cluster for other data that may have higher priorities. For our customers that are further along in their cloud journey and like to stay completely cloud native, Rubrik offers Cloud Cluster. This is the same code base as our on-prem solution, so you're getting the same features such as instant search and the rest. And we can use then S3 as an endpoint for your archive location, preventing any need for you to go external to AWS. But what if you want to start moving your workloads to the cloud? So Cloud On is the obvious choice that will help accomplish this. This feature goes ahead and allows you to archive to the cloud, and then it takes that VM and converts it into a native AMI EC2 instance. This can allow you to go ahead and do things like create additional copies of workloads on demand for your company for test and dev, or it can even be used as part of a disaster recovery plan for your company. The last offering we'll talk about here is EC2 protection. So we can also natively protect your EC2 instances by integrating with Amazon's EC2 API to capture snapshots of your instances the same way we can do with your on-prem infrastructure. Once again, maintaining all of Rubrik's main features. So no matter what stage of cloud migration your company is in or where you want to go, Rubrik can help make that much more secure and simple in regards to your data protection, saving you time and money. And that's pretty much all I had. And so now we'll go ahead and turn this over to Dustin Brandt and listen to see how he was able to use Rubrik and AWS to solve some issues his company was having.
Great, thank you, Michael. I appreciate the introduction there. Let's see here, advance some slides.
Yeah, they've already taken control from me.
There we go. Perfect. So for those of you who don't know who we are, America's Test Kitchen is a media and publishing company, and we're located in Boston. We're probably best known for our television shows, America's Test Kitchen and Cook's Country, and those air on PBS and affiliate stations like the Create Network. But we also publish our two flagship magazines, Cook's Illustrated and Cook's Country. We publish 20 to 25 cookbooks per year and 20 to 25 special interest newsstand publications per year. We produce Proof, 2019 Webby Award-winning podcast series. ATK Kids is our brand for young chefs. And of course, we have our websites, our online cooking school, and live events like Boston and Seattle Eats. Now, our mission is pretty simple. We want to help home cooks succeed. And to that end, we work to create content that will build confidence and create success for our customers. So this includes recipe development and testing. Honestly, we work about 6 months in advance on our recipe development. So we're testing Thanksgiving recipes in the early spring and grilling on the grill in the middle of the winter. And those recipes can be tested 40 or more times using a scientific method to provide foolproof results before they ever make it into any of our products. We also have unbiased product and ingredient reviews since we take no advertising. So let me tell you a little bit about our environment. We have 2 IT people, I'm one, supporting approximately 200 employees. So in addition to end user support and user configuration, we're also responsible for the entire internal operational infrastructure stack to support and enable the functions of the business. And this includes networking, virtualization, storage, content and application management services, backup and disaster recovery, which we'll talk about here, telecom, and of course, security and compliance. In this environment, we have a combination of traditional on-prem infrastructure supplemented by cloud hosting and services elements. In our environments, we host and store very large amounts of data related to our content production as well as our general work product and office files. Now, our virtualization environment is not terribly expansive, but we are hosting all of the business's critical production applications. And so we have approximately 50 virtual machines and a half a dozen or so standalone servers for compute. Our storage environments, on the other hand, are rather large. Specifically, we have about 1 million photography assets over many years of production. And this is taking up approximately 15 terabytes of our hot storage. We have about 140 terabytes of hot video storage, and so these are active projects that are in production, the most recent television season, or the most recent cooking school video production series. In addition to our active video, we have petabyte scales of data collected over 20 years of producing these 2 television shows and the associated video content. Historically for us, we've stored this data, or we've archived it and stored it on tape and moved it off facility. We've kept video masters in climate-controlled vaults, or we've just squirreled away hard drive RAIDs. And all of this has tended to add to the complexity of our management and the footprint in our environment. Beyond the content production assets, we also have about 10 terabytes of design and production data files and 50 terabytes of Office files. Excuse me. So with changing video and image standards year over year, we can see anywhere an increase anywhere from 20 to 30% in the size of assets and the number of assets, because we're constantly striving to produce better quality content for more channels. So why is this important to you, or why should you care? I wanted to take a slide without any fun pictures here, just to put in bullets, black and white, what are the problems that we faced? And I like to think of them in two categories. I think of them as constant challenges that are going to be there regardless of what solution we select, and then the challenges that we felt we could address with a new solution and our transition to Rubrik and AWS. I think you can already start to imagine some of the problems that we faced. But just to start, we have, as I indicated, large and ever-increasing storage requirements. With those shifting requirements, it's very difficult for us to manage the infrastructure associated with backup and protection for those assets. We have a lean team. Our company operates in a very lean way, and the team size is not going to increase. We have budget constraints, just like everyone. Optimizing our solution for our budget dollars was very critical. We needed a Swiss Army knife, not just a steak knife, to tackle this problem. And so operational management and scalability were key. Compression is a constant problem. The majority of file types that we work with, the video, the photography assets, eat compression algorithms for breakfast. And so they're just enormous blob files that we can't do much with. Now, the second category, the challenges that we felt that we could address with the new solution, included our poor RTOs and RPOs. We really had no reliable way of estimating our RTOs from our various collection of backup systems and point solutions and tape. And our RPOs, while they were measurable, were largely insufficient to the needs of the business. We had no holistic view or control. We wanted to address the fact that our data systems and backups were accomplished by this variety of systems and point solutions, and it made it very difficult for us to understand what was there. We wanted to address administrative overhead and complexity. Because there were several different systems and software options, we spent more time, I think, figuring out how to use each one, and so we were unable to optimize any of them. We have very little or no insight into our archived assets. So once something had been archived or it had truly gone to cold storage, it was extremely difficult for us to search or research recovery. Clunky tape backups. Managing a finicky tape library, the archive schedules, the volume of tapes required for all of our storage needs and systems resulted in a situation where we were always out of sync with our desired RPO policies. We thought we could address limited data center space. Again, our solutions included virtual machines, which we would have had anyway, but we also had aging components that were taking up excessive amounts of data center rack use, and also providing a very limited and insufficient amount of target storage space. And finally, we thought we could address the sparsity of our replication environments. Our replication environments were often given short shrift compared to procuring and using new storage and compute assets for business and production and asset development. So these replication environments were often out of sync and insufficient to the changing storage and compute needs. My mantra for IT here is simple: stabilize, consolidate, and simplify. In late 2017, we moved our headquarters, and at the time that we did this, we also took the opportunity to start to overhaul our aging infrastructure systems. And so this included doing something about our backup challenges and our DR capabilities. We wanted to hit as many of the problems as we could, and so we spent approximately 4 months at the end of 2017. We evaluated leading backup and DR solutions, and ultimately we selected Rubrik. Now, fast forward to the implementation, and I can tell you firsthand what Michael said about protection and implementation is true. Within approximately an hour of rack and stack, we were creating protection policy SLAs on our own. We had already started backing up our virtualized environment, and by late afternoon on the same day, the vast portion of our VM infrastructure was covered under our new protection policies. Effectively, in one afternoon, we had met all 3 of our goals for our virtualization backups. Our RTOs were reduced from days and weeks to minutes. Our RPOs were reliably and systematically applied based on our own value matrix. It was visible in one system dashboard, and it took absolutely no specialized training. So it was several months later that I turned to dealing with our NAS environments, and I admit I had some hiccups there, largely because of the volume. And I managed to, I think, fill up my Rubrik on-prem device by going a little crazy on assigning SLAs to our NAS volumes. So I originally had to pare it back, but it's at that point that we started to look very closely at our public cloud options. So this was made incredibly simple by Rubrik software. Their CloudOut feature allowed me to configure and test various cloud archive solutions, including AWS S3 and Glacier. After some Rubrik software updates, Instant Archive became the right tool at the right time for me to deal with my NAS backups and the archive needs of those environments. This meant that I could use all of the features of Rubrik's backup administration and policies without blowing up my Rubrik with transient and archival NAS storage. Excuse me. So up to this point, we have been using AWS for a small number of EC2 instances and S3 buckets to host a content repository system. And with CloudOut to AWS as an option, we began moving our long-term archives into S3 and Glacier. Configuring those archival locations in Rubrik was simple. It really only required an IAM role with an access key and a policy to access S3. So using Rubrik to archive to S3 allowed us to continue to use the Rubrik interface, which was completely simple. And we could review backups there, search our archives there for individual files, and restore those single files if we needed to. Of course, dealing with individual files actually helped keep our egress costs in check as well, but it also provided a completely transparent window into the content that we could use on demand to see into our archives. We didn't have to wait for tape deliveries anymore. We didn't have to wait for archive decompressions. It was all there at our fingertips. So with our growing presence in AWS because of CloudOut, it only made sense for us to continue using even more features on the Rubrik and in AWS. So we further expanded by setting up Rubrik's Cloud On integration with AWS and used the cloud workloads. With Cloud On, I'm able to archive my VMDKs directly to S3. And using Rubrik's integration, I can convert those VMDKs to AMIs on demand and launch them directly into EC2. Inside Rubrik, I can even configure individual VMs for pre-conversion to AMIs to speed up that EC2 launch. In adjusting our SLAs to begin using Cloud On features, we actually found that we were able to improve our free space on our on-prem Rubrik device. We were able to take more frequent snapshots and store them on the Rubrik once that archival location and the policies had pushed colder data to AWS. And overall, we found that it was about a 25% improvement in free space on our on-prem Rubrik device. And finally, Cloud Workloads allows me to configure my on-prem Rubrik so that it can see my AWS EC2 instances. those systems and services that we've been using for content management services. If I want to apply the same protection to these machines as I have for my internal systems, I can simply add those instances to one of my existing Rubrik SLAs. So what have we managed to accomplish, and take this opportunity to look back at our original goals? We have a large and increasing set of storage requirements. Well, S3 and Glacier provide all of the archival storage that our business needs. We have a lean team with many responsibilities and complex administration. Well, we solved that because we don't need any experts or specialists to administrate our Rubrik or AWS environments. We have seamless integrations between the two that have done all of the heavy lifting, and we can focus on policy management and compliance. We addressed our budgetary constraints. We're effectively limiting our cost exposure by combining both on-prem on the Rubrik for backups for the hotter and more recent items. We combine that with AWS for the longer-term, colder backups and deeper archives. As our infrastructure changes, Rubrik will provide the gateway for us to begin shifting from a CapEx hardware investment model to an OpEx usage cost model. We had complex assets with minimal compression. Well, we still have those, and we're not going to get rid of them. But as we've opened up low operational cost storage in AWS, we've mitigated that by using S3 and Glacier for those large archives. We previously had poor RTOs and RPOs. Our RPOs are now much more well-defined and easily managed and configured with our Rubrik SLA policies. Our RTOs are incredible now. It only takes minutes to recover. We previously had no holistic control and little to no insight into our archive. Rubrik's UI changed all of that for us. It's dead simple. The dashboarding, reports, the alerts are concise, they're useful, and recovering lost or corrupted content is literally just a keyword search away. We wanted to eliminate tapes because we had clunky tape backups. Well, we did that. We eliminated our tape archives in favor of a more transparent, management and searchability of the Rubrik and the on-demand AWS archives. We had limited data center space. We took 10 rack units down to 2, and of course, we immediately put that extra space to use for additional improvements to our production environments. But beyond that, operating strategically in AWS means that the rack units aren't my problem anymore. And finally, we solved some problems with the sparsity of our replication environments. We still maintain business continuity systems on-prem and in our data centers, but as our business grows and the production needs sort of race ahead of the continuity planning, I don't have to be concerned with scrambling to configure backup or DR environments to match that growth. I can actually use my Rubrik and the gateway to AWS to fill those critical roles. So between Rubrik and AWS, we've managed to vastly simplify our backup and DR systems, and the integrated approach has unlocked new opportunities for continuing to build out robust hybrid cloud operating environments. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Henry for QA and wrap up.
Thank you very much, Dustin. It was great to hear your story and how Rubrik and AWS were able to help really simplify your environment, provide you all those great benefits. So at this point, we're going to transition into our live Q&A session. As a reminder, you can submit any of your written questions through the question panel. And in the event we can't get to your question today, we'll follow up with you via email. So with that, the first question we have is in regards to scale. And I think, Michael, this will probably be a question for you, is how big can Rubrik grow?
Yeah, it's a great question. And typically we don't see too many issues with scale with Rubrik, just because it was meant to scale out from design. So it uses a single namespace for all of its storage underneath. And so if you need more storage, it's as simple as just adding another cluster, and it can virtually go for pretty much forever.
Yeah, okay, great. Glad to hear that. I'm sure customers will be very happy with the scale. And the great part is, also combining that with AWS storage services really gives you that, as I mentioned earlier, that virtual unlimited scalability with S3 as well. So, with both solutions, you're able to working together, you're able to really get whatever scale is needed for customers. So we have one question here, and I guess I will pass over to you, Michael, and Dustin. I don't know if you have any comments on it or not, but this is in regards to monitoring and how the monitoring of the Rubrik cluster works, and does it have any type of how do you see what's going on in the environment?
I can take that one, or Dustin, if you want to take that one, since you get to use it probably even more than I do.
Yeah, sure. So from a monitoring standpoint, we generally just use the Rubrik dashboard. So there's a very kind of intuitive dashboard that the Rubrik UI provides for us, that gives us, just a summary dashboard. So it shows us our protected VMs. It shows us our unprotected VMs. We can see how many objects are assigned to our SLA domains, what the current activity is. We can see throughput and dedupe and reduction percentages right in that initial dashboard. Even what I tend to use even more than that is actually the compliance reporting that the Rubrik UI offers. So I can go in and beyond just the summary dashboard, I can go in and take a look at my protected items and see, are there any out of compliance, and why are they out of compliance? Was a backup missed? Is something not firing correctly? Were there not enough resources available to complete the backup? So I can see that at a glance. And then I can use, beyond those two items, I can use sort of Rubrik's built-in reports gallery. So that allows me to see how much space is being used on my on-prem brick. It allows me to view and investigate orphaned items or live mounts that I might have and clean those up. So I tend to be fairly strictly using the actual UI dashboard. Monitoring the Rubrik cluster itself, so the nodes that are associated with the cluster, is really, we run a couple ICMP ping tests against it, just to make sure that the environment is up, and run that through, our equivalent of Nagios. But beyond that, I spend most of my time in the dashboard reviewing compliance.
Yep, and one more thing to add that I think is important is using our GPS, software as a service. We can actually go ahead and do pretty much that same thing, except no matter where your Rubrik cluster is, we can kind of expand that out and do it globally. But that was awesome.
Yeah, great explanation. Thanks for that. I think everyone now could feel really comfortable with all the things they can monitor within the platform. So in addition to monitoring, one of the questions here is, related to actually what you can back up. I think in addition to many customers now that are virtualized, the question is, can Rubrik also protect any customers that are using physical servers?
So I'll happily take that one. Yes, the answer is yes, yes, and yes, and yes. So I've got a mix of Windows and Linux virtual environments running on VMware, and so I've got, like I said, in sort of the overview of my environment, I've got about 5 or 6 physical servers, and I am using Rubrik to back those up as well. So there's an additional agent that you have to install on those standalone servers that you wouldn't necessarily have to do with the virtualized environments, because the Rubrik admin can pick those up from the host integration. So you install an additional piece of software, like an agent, basically. It's an agent-based type of thing for the physical servers. And then, so that sort of addresses my physical servers. And then beyond that, I mean, just form, fit, and functionality of the Rubrik itself. Like I said, I'm doing Windows, I'm doing Linux, I'm doing the physical servers of Windows and Linux. We do utilize their native database protection for a couple MS SQL databases that we use. We haven't actually done the MySQL database protection because we haven't yet needed to, but there's some protection built in there. And then, of course, like I said, we're doing our NAS volumes as well. So this is really just kind of specifying the target or the volume amount, and just pointing the Rubrik at it, applying an SLA policy and a file set. And in my case, like I said, I kind of blew away part of my brick trying to back up all of my NAS stuff to it, but once I got an archive target location set up in S3, I was able to fire that off, an instant archive right out to the S3 bucket.
Great to hear. So one of the questions here, I think it might be for you, Dustin. They're curious because networking is such an important aspect when connecting to the cloud. I don't know if you're able to share anything about what kind of network connection or bandwidth you're using.
Yeah, so I will say we're using I think what Rubrik would describe as an undocumented feature for part of our connection to AWS. They do recommend a virtual private gateway and a customer gateway on the AWS side. As far as bandwidth goes, we're rocking it out on 500 megabyte pipes out of our data center and our campus location. So there's one on either end, and then I have some dark fiber between them. I largely have not seen a huge I really haven't seen a huge spike since the initial ingestions, and largely because a lot of my data center traffic, or a lot of my backup traffic, is coming out of my data center, which is that pipe has been underutilized because I don't have general population hitting it. Yeah, so at the initial sort of ingestion point, we did see a huge spike in throughput and traffic, and I think there probably were some bottlenecks at that point. But after that, because Rubrik is sort of intelligently deduping for us, we're seeing delta traffic only. And so that's, indexed on our side and pushed out and searchable. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you brought up a great point in regards to dedupe, because I think that's an important factor for everyone on the webinar to understand, especially as it comes to backing up to AWS Cloud, is that dedupe really helps you on the network and storage layer. And we seem to do have a couple of questions here in regards to dedupe. So I don't know if maybe in general, Michael, you can just give a couple of minutes on talking about dedupe with Rubrik and how that works.
So that is a large subject. So that's probably not something that we can kind of go into here, just because of the enormity of it, and kind of how we do it on the back end. Because there's no real. I'm not going to come up and say, well, we do 1,000 to 1 or anything like that. But there it is an intelligent dedupe and compression that happens on the brick in the back end on the cluster itself. And if they are interested in learning more about that, we are willing to share. But as I said, it'll take just a little bit more time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think any expectations are going too deep into it on this call. But yeah, definitely, if anyone's interested in learning more, please reach out to the Rubrik team to learn about that. Let's see what other questions we have here. All right, how about in terms of, it seems you have a question here about encryption and what kind of encryption is used or supported with Rubrik.
I'll go ahead and take this one. So basically in flight, when we go ahead and ingest the data, it's all using TLS protocol to go ahead and do that. So it's encrypted while going across the wire. And after it goes ahead and gets on the Rubrik cluster itself, then it can be encrypted with AES 256-bit encryption, all the way up to FIPS 140 level 2, depending on the compliance level needed.
Okay, great. So let's see. Oh, the next question here. So there's also a question in regards to compliance, which I think maybe ties in a little bit to the security encryption aspects. Michael, is there anything you want to say in regards to compliance with Rubrik?
Well, we can, depending on the compliance level that you're attempting to try for, we can usually work with just about any sort of customer requirements you have to go ahead and make sure that you are compliant. There's a lot of dashboards, as mentioned before, and reporting that goes on behind the scenes, and you can go ahead and access, and you can get all that set up, and that helps a ton with most of the things that you're trying to do. And we have interesting things planned out, and we hope everyone looks forward to and keeps watching us.
Great, thank you for that. So I think we'll have time for maybe one or two more questions. Seems to be a question with how to get started or test this, whether with on premises or on AWS. Michael, do you want to take quickly from the Rubrik side, and I could talk a little bit about the AWS side?
Sure. So I mean, as far as getting started, you can reach out to your local sales team, and we can go ahead and do a number of different things depending on customer need. Whether or not if you're just looking for a kind of a quick show and walkthrough of Rubrik itself, to if need be, we can go ahead and set up a proof of concepts and all that sort of thing. So it just kind of starts with us. So just let us know what you're looking for, what kind of situation you have and you need to get taken care of, and we go from there.
Great, thanks for that, Michael. And in addition to that, also with AWS, it's very easy to get started. If you don't currently have a AWS account, you can go ahead and sign up for a free tier account, which is something that you can go right on AWS website to go ahead and click through and get started, and that gives you access to a set of resources for free for the first 12 months that you have that account. So it's easy to be able to spin up some things and do some testing and get comfortable with the platform, and makes it easy, as you can both test out Rubrik and test out AWS. So with that, I think we have maybe time for one more question or so. Let me see here. So there is a question in regards to, let's see. So there's a question, I think it's similar actually to the other question, which is about platform supports, but I think we already covered that. So this question is in regards to backing up on AWS. Does Rubrik support backing up of EC2 instances and any other services beyond EC2?
So yeah, we go ahead and like mentioned in one of the slides, we actually integrate with the EC2 API at this point to back up your EC2 instances. And then I guess at this point, as far as the services goes, it kind of depends. If the services are actually running on top of your EC2 instances or in a VM or in an instance that you're running in AWS, then sure, we should be able to back those up. As far as individual AWS instances, I think that's a little different, and I think AWS has high availability and backups for that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, between Rubrik and AWS, we could be able to protect the things that you need to protect on the platform. All right, I think that's all the time that we had for today in regards to questions. As a reminder, any questions that we didn't get to, we'll be sure to follow up with on email. I want to also share some important links with everybody. So if you want to learn any more about AWS storage and the various storage services that we discussed today, as well as other AWS storage services, you can go ahead and follow that first link. You can also learn more about Rubrik on AWS by following the second link on your screen. And finally, as I mentioned earlier in the session, that you can try AWS for free by going ahead to the aws.amazon.com/free and sign up for a free tier account. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining us for today's webinar.